Hi, I'm Lisa Fletcher, and you're in The Stream. Today, who are the so-called Internet Hindus, and why do they oppose a secular India? As always, our digital producer, Malika Bilal, is here. Malika, users anticipating this show made AJ Stream a trending topic in India.
They definitely
What's
did.
the tone of everything?
It shows you just how heated the debate is going to be during the show. Not only was that a trending topic, but the term Internet Hindu was also trending shortly in India yesterday. So for those of you at home, remember, join the conversation. Tweet us using the hashtag AJStream, and you could be part of the show.
And next to Malika is Sudanan Dume. He is a fellow at the conservative-leaning American Enterprise Institute. He's also one of Foreign Policy Magazine's Twitterati 100, or a feed to follow. Sudanan, thanks for being here.
Great to be here.
Looking forward to hearing from you. And of course, you should also follow our Twitter feed at AJ Stream, where we share upcoming topics, guests, and of course interact with you. It's just one more way that you can be in the stream.
Hi, I'm Javed Akhtar. I'm from Syria. I'm the founder of Virtus Linux. I'm in the stream.
For communities who feel they don't have a voice, social media provides an outlet. It's a way to reach the world when traditional media ignores them. But once that voice is established online, as you're going to see from some of the tweets that will come up behind me, can a group go too far in making its case, using abusive tactics on Twitter to stifle debate rather than engage? That's the accusation against so-called Internet Hindus, or online supporters of Hindu nationalism. They follow a philosophy known as Hindutva, or Hinduness, which is a core principle of the RSS, or National Volunteer Organization. Here's what they believe.
In essence, Hindutva, or cultural nationalism, is the cornerstone of the RSS thought. Hindutva is a defining feature of Indian society. This implies an appreciation of the roots of Indian identity by its people, irrespective of religion. The RSS believes that the core unifying factor of Bharat is its ancient Hindu culture. This cultural oneness overrides socio-religious diversity of this country. Thus, to the RSS mind, every citizen is a Hindu, irrespective of his religion, caste or creed, as he inherits the same culture of this land. The RSS considers this nation as one and rejects the idea of dividing it on religious lines as minority and majority. It believes that the so-called minority, a Jew, a Parsi, a Muslim and a Christian too, is an equal inheritor of our heritage, as is a Sikh, a Jain, a Buddhist, and an atheist.
Sounds idealistic, even lovely. But many of India's minorities don't want to think of themselves as Hindu. And many Hindus see this movement as a challenge to India's secular democracy. So, who are the Internet Hindus? What are their goals? And how are they related to the broader Hindu nationalist movement? Joining us now via Skype from New Delhi is Sagrika Ghosh. She's an award-winning Indian journalist and author. She coined the term Internet Hindus after being attacked on Twitter by nationalist users. Also in New Delhi is the former Minister of Commerce and President of the Janata Party, Subramanian Swamy. He is a hero to many of the so-called Internet Hindus. Both of you, welcome to the stream.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Now, I know many online Hindus don't like the name, and we're going to get to that. But Sagarika, I want to start with a question from you, and it is from one of our followers on Twitter. Straight Hindu asks, why Internet Hindu? Coin a term for a group, then give it a bad name via paid media you work for. All right, so why did you call them Internet Hindus?
Lisa, mine was just a descriptive term of the Twitter community that exists on Twitter, on Facebook. These are online communities that are very well organized and that, as you say, hold to the ideology of Hindu nationalism. And certain issues such as minorities or Pakistan or Narendra Modi, the incredibly popular BJP Chief Minister of Gujarat, these are issues on which these communities attack you if you differ with them. They will come after you. They will pounce on you. They will call you liberal and pseudo-secular and anti-national and traitor, subversive. These are the kind of words they use. So my word was simply to describe this community of people that exists online. A number of them very Islamophobic, I have to say, very anti-liberal. In the classical definition of liberal, and particularly going after what they perceive as pseudo-secular or liberal secular people, and their view is that the media in India is Congress, is loyal to the Congress, loyal to the party of the day, loyal to dynasty. They're all paid by the Congress party, which is
right. And Sagarika, I want to get to the topic of media and the perception that people have of it in a minute. But first, Subramanian, I want to ask you, what's wrong with the term Internet Hindu? In so many other ways, people are proud to be identified as Hindu. Why does this offend in this case?
Well, it's offense in the case as if this is a microbe or some kind of people from another planet. It only happens that the print media and the visual media had an intermediary, the editor or the owner and so on. And this internet has now made it possible to do away with the intermediary, and the people relate to each other directly. And as far as this abuse and attack is concerned, it's on both sides. I receive a lot of hate Twitters. They say all kinds of things. They say similarly the other side also gets an attack of this kind. So what's happened is that the Hindus who didn't find a voice in the traditional media are suddenly finding themselves not alone or isolated, but a very large number. In fact, they now think they are the majority in the country.
Well, Sudan, and this is a term, of course, that is causing some debate among our community. Abdul Wadud says the term Internet Hindus is flawed. Hinduism preaches peace. Internet abusers are cursing peaceful religion of Hinduism. Himmanpan says if the Internet Hindus hardly involve in religious preachings, why term them specifically as Hindus? And last, a tweet that says, I reject this term, Internet Hindus. I'm Hindu by birth, by behavior, at home, in public, and on Internet, it comes by default. So is there a problem with using that term?
I don't see a problem with the term as long as it is clearly defined. However, I would disagree with slightly with the characterization both of Sagarika and yours, in the sense that I don't think that I would not describe everybody who subscribes to Hindu nationalism as an Internet Hindu. There are perfectly reasonable people who may have a point of view that you and I may disagree with, but they are not Hindu. They are not Internet Hindus. What happens here, what I'm talking about, and what I believe Sagarika was speaking about, is a specific kind of person who is abusive, who is not reflective, who is not interested in any kind of serious engagement, and is, normally I characterize these people as having, 50 followers and 5,000 tweets. I mean, these are people who have found a megaphone suddenly in Twitter, or believe they found a megaphone, and use it to troll and chase people and make themselves offensive. But that is not, it's very different. There are serious people on the Hindu right in India who are not Internet Hindus, who are serious, thoughtful political analysts who may hold a different view about what India's, which the kind of secularism India should follow and so on. So to call anybody who is a Hindu nationalist an Internet Hindu, I think is just inaccurate. So we should clear that up right at the outset.
But safe to call an Internet Hindu somebody who is definitely right-leaning?
I think yes. So the way I see it, that if you sort of look at it as a tide, what the Internet Hindus are the flotsam. So these are the most. This is the most abusive fringe of a larger movement. You may agree or disagree with the movement, but it doesn't make the entire movement abusive. This is definitely the abusive fringe. So what we're talking about is an abusive, vocal, uncouth group of people who subscribe to Hindu nationalism, but it's a subset of the people who subscribe to it.
Subramanian, would you agree with that this is an abusive, vocal subset of people?
Well, I think that's a description not exclusive to the Hindus who are Hindu nationalists. It's also, there's such a group exists in the so-called secular group, and they are as abusive, they are as crude, and so on. So I don't think that this classification has any meaning at all. What's important is that the Hindus through the internet have found a voice, and leaving aside those who are abusive, which is a very small number, I would say a large number of them are getting to learn about their heritage. They are learning about things which the 200 years of British rule had distorted our minds into making out as if India was a creation of the British Empire, and the concept of a Republic of India was in 1947 when we got the freedom, and that this is not an ancient nation. There were Aryans who came from Europe, and there were Dravidians who came from Africa. This kind of bunkum, which has now been exploded by modern science, especially the DNA studies, they will now realize the new assertion that they have an identity, and that the identity is a Hindu identity in a cultural sense. That is, both Muslims and Christians are also of Hindu ancestry, and therefore we all relate to the past of India. That kind of identity has come to represent this generation, which communicates through the internet.
Well, speaking of Muslims and Hindus, Sagarika, I want to get your thoughts on this because there's a video comment left by a member of our community directly for you. Have a listen.
Hi, my name is Jagish, and I'm a proud US-based internet Hindu. My question is for Mrs. Sagrika Ghosh. Madam, on many counts in your talk shows and debates that you participate in, you have used the term saffron terrorism. Yet, in any of the cases, you have never used the term green terrorism. Can you please elaborate why you are being selective in maligning a religion? Thank you.
Are you being selective, and are you maligning a religion?
Green terrorism? I mean, if he's talking about Islamic terrorism, this is a subject on which we are covering every day. So I don't see what the issue is there. I find that question strange, to say the least. There are elements of the Hindu fringe groups that are engaged in violent activities and that are engaged in extremist activities. There are Hindu right-wing groups that are involved in terror activities that has been investigated. It's under investigation. And those are the stories that we're covering. That doesn't mean that we're not covering the big acts of Islamic terror that exist in India as well. So I really don't see what the issue is here. You know, Lisa, I just want to make a point here about the internet Hindus, is that, you know, there is a mythification of the enemy. There's a demonization of the enemy. The enemy is the liberal, secular media, which is groveling at the feet of the establishment, which is socialist, which is left-wing, which is liberal, which is elitist. That is just so not the case. You know, the media today is just exploding. We cover every political party. We cover every issue. We cover every politician. We cover the Congress. We cover the BJP. We cover left-wing. We cover right-wing. So it's not a question, you know, just mythifying an enemy and making this liberal aristocracy the enemy that we have to fight against with our grassroots nationalist credentials is really not, it is a binary opposition that doesn't exist. It's in the mind completely. I also want to say that, you know, there are two conflicting versions of nationalism. There is the secular nationalism of the Congress, which is very flawed. As Sadanand pointed out, the secularism practiced by the Congress has got a lot of vote bank politics, short-term interests, all kinds of cynical motivations. And there is the Hindu nationalism of the Sangh Parivar of the BJP. This is the right-wing and the sort of middle left-wing poles of Indian politics. Now, for some reason, the internet Hindus believe that the media is colonized by the Congress-leaning, secular, left thought, which is absolutely not the case.
Okay. Now, I want to, Subramanian, I want to give you an opportunity to respond. Sagarika is saying the media is doing a good job. She's saying it's representing your position fairly. Do you think that's the case?
No, not at all. And in fact, when the Hindu nationalists talk about the media, they're not talking about the media in general. They're talking about the English media. They're generally speaking not much complaint against the language media. We have so many languages in our country, and they all have their television station. The focus is on this English media, which is essentially rooted in the in its perspective and its admiration with the West, and that's what is being targeted. And it's not the media as a whole, let me say that. And what I think is that as far as this targeting is concerned, this demonizing is concerned, it was both ways. I mean, the liberals have done that, and I have been through much of that. I've lost my tenured professorship at the Indian Institute of Technology because I advocated market economy when I said the socialism of the Soviet Union will not work in India. And it has happened to me recently even at Harvard, where they canceled my courses because they didn't like an article I wrote in India. And they didn't even ask me for an opinion on that, which is unheard of in any democracy. So I think we shouldn't complain about that, the demonization process, because it happens from both sides. What we need to understand is what is that it is aching the Hindu, because he has not found an expression. And the kind of leadership Mr. Jawaharlal Nehru gave, and it is now continuing through the Congress, and which is the English media more or less follows and abides by it, and is selective in reporting. That's what the complaint is about.
Well, Dr. Swamy, I think one of those modes of expression that you just mentioned is here on the stream. Tweeting us just a few minutes ago is Lai Bari, who said, "It is quite evident that the ruling government has pushed its propaganda through paid media. Internet Hindus want to own the media." That's followed by a tweet from Amit, who says, "Liberal bias would not be appropriate. Indian mainstream media is biased against Hindu identity." But Sudanand, there's a video comment that was just left, and I'd like you to have a listen.
From Madurai. There is a deep sense of resentment among the Hindu youth and the center-right thinkers in India. There is an anti-Hindu bias in the media establishment. You can see it in the way they are reporting on Hindu issues, suppressing certain issues like the Deganga riots. Anything Hindu has become communal in India, and anything minority suddenly becomes secular. And this is the dichotomy to be addressed.
What's your take on the perceived anti-Hindu bias?
I recognize that this is a widespread perception. I happen not to agree with it. I think that the mistake he makes is to presume that Hindutva stands for or represents all Hindus. I think it's definitely true that many educated English-speaking Indian elites, as Dr. Swamy alluded to, are more sympathetic to a kind of pluralism and secularism where people don't wear their religious identity on their sleeve necessarily. I think that is true, and I would say that among Indian elites across the board, whether it's in the media or in other fields of society, they would be dominant, and they have been dominant traditionally from the times of Nehru. That is not the same as saying that India is anti-Hindu. There are many ways of being a Hindu. And the presumption over here by that gentleman's comment is that the only authentic way of being a Hindu is believing in Hindutva. I think that is one authentic way. I don't have a problem with people who believe in that way necessarily. But this notion that there is this deep-seated bias against Hinduism is just rubbish. What is more interesting and is potentially debatable is there a bias against Hindu nationalism in the media? And there, I'd say, in the elite media, you would have many more voices who are opposed to Hindu nationalism and far fewer who support it. And that, I think, is an accurate statement.
Subramanian, I want to get back to you coming off the tail of that. We've got all these opposing viewpoints. Some of them are rather extreme. You've written some rather extreme things in your time, in a recent op-ed that you took quite a bit of heat for. But it brings up some interesting points, which is where do you draw the line between nationalism, extreme nationalism, and fascism? Because when you're already dealing with groups who are to the extreme, it's almost like you're fanning the flames. How do you draw that line, and how do you keep control over what's going on?
Well, I don't know. The drawing of the line would be on what you would constitute what you think is India. If you think India is a continuing civilization of the Hindus as a dominant cultural civilization, and that you know for a fact now through modern science that all the people here are by and large, overwhelmingly of the same background, either they are Hindus or their ancestors have been Hindus. The question is that if you hold this view, it is considered an extreme view, because for almost 2 centuries, what has been taught is that India is not one country, but many countries welded into one by the British administrative system, which we reject. Now, that's been the conflict throughout. The moment you say India is a continuing civilization of the Hindus, and Hindutva doesn't mean you have to be a Hindu. It means Hindutva means Hindu-ness, which means a certain set of values where we, the way we treat our parents, where the way we behave with each other, the interpersonal relationships, the attitude to age, gender, a variety of things which are different from the West and other cultures, say even the Middle East. That's where the problem comes. The moment you differ from the view given to us or from 200 years of what I would call as brainwashing through distorted history texts, that the moment you deviate from that, you become a fascist, you become an extremist, and so on. That's where the problem arises. It doesn't arise.
Sure.
I'd like to jump in, Dr. Swamy.
There is no violence advocated by any of our Hindutva nationalists.
I think the.
Okay, let's let Sagarika jump in. Go ahead, Sagarika.
The thing is, in the words of Dr. Swamy, Hindutva is, in his vision, an intellectual force, the civilizational life force. It is about respect for elders. It's a social glue, all of that. Now, in his intellectual scheme, that may be the case, but when this message trickles down to the cadres and to the people on the street, it becomes a message of violence and hatred towards the other. Maybe they don't have the intellectual tools that Dr. Swamy has. They don't have the power of argument that Dr. Swamy has. The fact is, these very arguments, these very sophisticated arguments of cultural nationalism and and unfolding Hindu identity on the ground becomes simply a justification for riots on minorities.
Siddhanand?
That's the basic problem.
I have a different. I also disagree with Dr. Swamy, but I have a different disagreement. I don't think it's fair to judge an intellectual argument based on what some lumpen element may or may not do with it. But I have a problem with the argument itself, which is that it's deeply undemocratic to try and tell somebody else that, well, you must think of yourself as having had Hindu, and may or may not be factually true. But if someone in a modern democracy does not want to acknowledge that ancestry, or wants to sort of seek identity in Islam or Christianity or in the West or in the Arab world or wherever, that's their personal affair. You cannot mandate that upon a citizen of your country, and that's what's the problem. I mean, the problem really lies in its tension with a modern idea of individual rights, where that is your personal affair. It's no affair of the state, and it's no affair of politics. And you can't then say that if you don't acknowledge that your ancestors were Hindu, as Dr. Swamy has suggested, we'll take away your right to vote. That is an absurd and deeply illiberal position to hold.
Well, on that note, we'll give everyone a chance to respond to that. But I'd like to leave us with something for the post show.
Well, let me say...
I'm sorry, but Amr says, on Twitter, Indian secularism is strong and vibrant thanks to largely tolerant Hindu majority. Internet Hindus don't represent the whole India. And of course, Dr. Swamy, I'll give you a chance to respond to that in the post show.
All right. On that note, everybody sit tight. We're going to continue this discussion in about 15 seconds in our online post show, and everybody will have a chance to respond. So just go to stream.aljazeera.com and you will find us there. And if you're already thinking about tomorrow's show, we're going to do it on student loans in America that are creating a lifetime of indebtedness. So start tweeting on that as well. And we'll see you back here in about 10 seconds. All right, welcome back to our online post show. We're going to jump right back in. Malika, hit us again with that tweet that you left us with a couple of minutes ago.
Yes, definitely. And Dr. Swamy, this is directed to you. Indian secularism is strong and vibrant thanks to a largely tolerant Hindu majority. Internet Hindus don't represent the whole of India. And I wonder if you can elaborate on that. In addition to, I know you wanted to respond to a point that was made earlier about stripping of voter rights. So go ahead.
Yeah. Well, first of all, you see, that itself makes the Hindu proud of himself, that it's because he's an overwhelming majority in India, that's why you have secularism. I think if India was an overwhelmingly Islamic majority, it won't have secularism. That's at least from the examples we have seen. We have seen majority Islam of Kashmir. What has happened to those 500,000 Hindus who were driven out and still living in refugee camps? The population of Hindus was 32% of Bangladesh. Today it's down to 7%. It's perhaps one of the largest religious cleansing that has taken place, but nobody talks about it. In the state of Kerala, a Christian professor set an exam paper on punctuation, where he lifted up an article from a newspaper, perhaps without thinking, where there were some critical comments about Islam. And what happened, the local Sharia court, which is illegal, but it never exists, it nevertheless exists, they passed a judgment that both his hands should be cut off. So when that professor was going for a walk in Cochin, 4 boys came in and cut his hands off. Now, these are some of the demonstrations we see which affirms to us that it's because of the overwhelming Hindu majority of India that we are still secular, and therefore we want to safeguard that Hindu majority. In that context is what I have said, that we must recognize that the mainstream is Hindu, and after all, we partitioned India between those Muslims who couldn't bear to live with Hindus, and those who could stay. Now, it's not I alone, it is Dr. Ambedkar, there are so many other thinkers who have said very clearly that once partition takes place, it has to be made explicitly clear that this minority-majority relationship must have some connection with India's past. That's what we are redefining. And I say, what is wrong if a Muslim acknowledges that what is the truth, what has been proved by the DNA, that his ancestors are Hindus?
Sagarika,
I don't
want to give you a chance to jump in here.
I just want to say that, it's all very well for us to say that Hindus want a voice and Hindus need to be heard. The fact is, discrimination against Muslims is a day-to-day reality in India. The Muslim community is one of the most backward communities in India. I know that they haven't been well served by the Congress's brand of vote bank politics and appeasement of the minorities, as Dr. Swamy would no doubt characterize it as. But, let's not run away from the reality of religious discrimination that exists. Of course, the Hindus are a majority. Of course, they're culturally assertive. Of course, the Hindu identity is dominant in the urban middle class. And nobody's saying we don't need a modern right-wing party. India does need a modern right-wing party. The difficulty is that India's cultural right embraces the economics of the left. The BJP increasingly does not embrace the free market and opposes free market reforms. That's a different story. What I'm saying is we do need a two-party system, a broadly left liberal party and a broadly right party, and those two need to exist, and there has to be constructive dialogue. My only point is that in a situation where discrimination is rife, where there is a lot of religious hatred, where there is a lot of religious intolerance growing increasingly, I think the time to assert Hinduism and to assert Hindu pride is not needed. Hindus are dominant. They are the majority. They have nothing to fear.
Well, Sudan, and speaking of religious intolerance, I want to step away from politics and go back to the media for a second. There's a tweet here from Atirith, and if we can get a shot of my screen here. Atirith, of course, is a former producer for the stream. He says India's liberal media is trigger-happy about Hindu fundamentalism, but unwilling to take on Islamic fanaticism. Would you agree with that?
I don't entirely agree with that. I do think that there's a form of, shall we say, politeness in India, which is that you don't criticize people outside of your own faith. And I think that form of politeness has been extended to the degree where people who are in fact not moderate are painted as moderate when they happen to be, when they're Muslim fundamentalists or Christian fundamentalists. A great example of that is the televangelist Zakir Naik, who's regularly feted as some kind of moderate when he's not. That said, my fundamental disagreement with Sagarika is that she characterizes the situation in India as much, much more dire than in fact it is. Is India imperfect? Yes. Could India do a better job of treating its minorities, particularly its Muslims? Yes, it could. But it's fundamentally a tolerant society. It is fundamentally a pluralistic society. It is fundamentally a society where people will go and cheer a movie star or allow a businessman to do well, or people rise to the highest level in all spheres of public life. Could it do better? Yes. Do I hope that it'll do better still in 20 years? Yes. But I think that Sagarika's characterization of it as a society that is deeply rife with all kinds of prejudice is, frankly, it sort of shows a blindness to what the reality of the rest of the world is.
Sagarika, if body language said it all, you'd be screaming.
Where is Anand living? I mean, he's living in the US. He should
I come to India all the time, and I've seen a lot of other countries.
You're looking at a situation where Shabana Azmi and Javed Akhtar, household names in India, cannot find a flat in Mumbai.
Do you really think that, okay, let me step back. Do you think that India discriminates more against its minorities than any country in the region, in Asia? Name me a country with a better record than India.
I'm not saying that there isn't tolerance. I'm not saying
there's
that
a ton of tolerance.
But let's accept that religious discrimination is a very serious issue here.
No one says it's not, but you have to have a benchmark.
Our lives, it's becoming, our societies are becoming segregated almost.
All right.
It's as bad as that. It's as bad as that. I think we really need to take a look inwards. You need to look at the exposes we've done on how Muslims are finding it difficult to find a place to live. Of course, there is growing tolerance as well. I'm not saying the picture is bleak. I'm not saying it's dire.
Okay, it seemed to me that you painted a very bleak picture.
We've got about 30 seconds left in the show. Subramanian, I want to give you the last word since you've been waiting patiently.
Let me say that a Hindu in Kashmir would find worse discrimination than the Muslim in the rest of India. So, I mean, I cannot deny that there is discrimination. But it's surprising that after 800 years of being a ruling class, the Muslims still find themselves poor and require state assistance to survive.
All right, and on that note, we are going to have to wrap up our discussion. I want to say thank you to Sadanand, Sagarika, and Subramanian. And we're going to run over to Malika now, who's got some other leads that she's following for us. Malika.
A French photographer in China is stirring controversy. Benoit César's photos show Westerners selling clothes on the streets of China, cleaning up construction sites, and sweeping the sidewalks. César's art shows what China would look like as the world's top economy, bringing foreigners to Asia for low-wage jobs. The gallery has attracted criticism and praise, as the blog Ministry of Tofu translates. Now it is us Chinese who are doing these jobs around the world. Only after China becomes stronger can what's in the photos materialize, one person writes. Well, staying in China, our next lead looks at a physical fight between bloggers. Take a look. As reported on the blog Beijing Cream, the fight started with an exchange of online taunts between a pro-Communist Party professor, shown here being knocked down, and a protest-covering journalist, shown here in pink. At one point, artist and activist Ai Weiwei appeared, drawing cheers from the crowd. State-controlled media joined the fray, saying the incident humiliated all Chinese cyber intellectuals. And our last leads from Libya, where residents shared their thoughts with Al Jazeera via text message on the first free elections in 40 years. Surely I will take part. I'm hoping security and freedom will be achieved, writes Abdul Aziz from Tobruk. I'll participate, writes Afghan from Ghat, and I wish they can fix the situation in the country. Well, you can find the links to these stories on our website at stream.aljazeera.com. Lisa?
All right, and once again, our thanks to our guests, Sadanand, Sagarika, and Subramanian. We appreciate the lively discussion. Join us tomorrow. We're going to be talking about student loans in America, and are they creating a lifetime of indebtedness? Tweet us your thoughts and your questions on that. And until then, we'll see you online. Take care.